All right, so welcome to the Biohacking Beauty Podcast. My guest today, I'm very excited to have him, is Avi Greenberg. Avi, do me a favor and tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's an honor. My name is Avi. I am a certified Wim Hof instructor. I'm a recent father of a baby girl, Josephine, and I started in this practice of Wim Hof method 6 years ago on my own, and never thought I'd eventually be climbing mountains with Wim and leading workshops with thousands of people. But that was the path I ended up taking, and I left my career in startups, health and wellness, fashion, and the last one was in tech to pursue full-time Wim Hof method workshops, private one-on-one breath coach, and also corporate wellness, instructor for companies like Netflix, Samsung, and some smaller companies as well. So these days you can find me in Salt Lake City. I came from Brooklyn, and I'm living out here practicing jujitsu, doing backyard sauna and ice bath every day, and leading small workshops, both corporate and private.
Yeah, so as I said before, I'm personally super excited to have you on. I've been following you for a while. That's how I found out about you through social media and looking into the Wim Hof method. And so before I think we begin and kind of delve into exactly what you're doing, can you please tell whoever, you know, the one person who haven't heard about Wim Hof and his method, what exactly that this method is about and what are some of the practices and why would people do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Wim is an actual person. He's a man. He's from the Netherlands. If you ever meet
That's
him,
debatable if it's the
yeah,
actual
totally. Honestly, I was thinking even more of a Neanderthal. If you ever look at his calves, they look like bowling balls. He's just a very short, stocky, strong individual. And he basically repackaged and remodeled an ancient practice that all different cultures utilize. The three pillars of the method are breathing, cold, and mindset. And the breathing is taken from Tumo monks in the Himalayas. So these monks utilize this breathing technique to change their body temperature and change their metabolism. Maybe partially knowing, they're in the mountains, in these snow-capped mountains, and they use this breathing to heat their bodies up. And then he also willingly started going into cold. So for Wim, it was an experience that he did from loss. His wife had committed suicide, so he was dealing with the loss of his wife, raising four children. A real free spirit. He was a yoga instructor. He was a mountaineer. He was a kind of like an all-around wild man. And to deal with the loss, he started going into the cold. And as his kids grew up, they were, as I've been told by his daughter, they were made fun of and insulted in school because they had this wild dad who was probably picking them up, with no shoes on and in t-shirt and shorts in the middle of winter. So kids can be kind of rough. And as the kids grew up, they realized there was something special about their dad as he continued to break world records and climb mountains and swim under ice, frozen water. And the kids eventually decided to create a business out of it, because Wim's not a businessman. If you've met him, if you've seen him, it's not his modus operandi. He is not interested in creating a business. He's interested in helping people feel happy, healthy, and strong. That's sort of his motivation, is to give people their power back. So when I found Wim Hof method, that was where I was at. I needed to get my power back. I needed to get my energy back. I needed to kind of wake myself up from the long slumber I'd been in. I was lethargic, tired, depressed, like a lot of people are, suffering from anxiety. And I saw this Vice documentary on Wim, which a lot of you have probably seen, or you've heard him on Tim Ferriss or Joe Rogan. And there's some sort of like childlike enthusiasm. And I lost that. I numbed myself out for years, and it was time for me to rediscover that. So 6 years ago, actually living in Miami, I was living in North Beach. I would get up every morning and I forced myself to do the breathing. And then I found a cold plunge and I went into the cold every day. And I didn't know what to do. And the first time I got in, I was out in 5 seconds, in and out. And then from there, you start to realize I deal with stress by breathing. If I extend my exhales, if I slow things down, I can handle the cold better. And then all of a sudden things start to click, and then it carries over to your regular life.
And what did you, so that, first of all, that's a great, I think, introduction to the Wim Hof method. Not necessarily because you have to be in trouble to discover, something new. It's something that we've gone over in the podcast before, and I was talking about in other podcasts, that and I'm going to include you into the biohacking family. I think everything you are doing to affect your biology out of a kind of a choice it can be translated into biohacking. And I say it a lot that most people, I feel like, have found this space because of some personal issues, but it definitely carries over to anyone who wants, a better, to optimize their life, if you would. So what are some of the benefits that you've experienced out of either breathing, and I'm sure we're going to get more into breathing, but just as like to entice someone to listen to the rest of this podcast?
Yeah. So I think early on, sorry to cut you off, but early on, I was just so excited because early on, I didn't realize how bad I was. Like I knew I had low energy and I knew I was tired a lot of the time, but I didn't realize how bad it was till it started to shift and change. And the biggest change that I think I felt early on was that my sleep improved almost immediately. It improved by the fact that I was waking up 4, 5, 6 times a night. And all of a sudden, by doing cold and this breathing exercise every day, and I was also doing heat, I was going into the sauna, doing the cold plunge and doing the breathing once in the morning and once at night, I noticed almost immediately, maybe a week in, my sleep just started to change. I actually started to wake up and feel rested. I was going to sleep earlier. I decided to also change my diet at the time. So I'm sort of like, I don't just jump into the pool with one foot. I jump in head first. And that's what I did. I jumped in head first. I decided to adopt the habits and the routines. And all of a sudden the sleep changed. And then, my body started to feel less achy, less stiff. My mood started to improve. Like my enthusiasm started to improve. And I was actually working for an anti-aging medical practice at the time. One of these hormone replacement therapy clinics that was opening up in Miami. And so I had access to get blood panels done. So I actually could look at my hormone panel, my testosterone, my cortisol, my thyroid, my cardiovascular panel. So I could actually see in real time how my body was starting to change. And they also had us do in-body examinations where they measure your skeletal muscle mass versus your body fat. So in real time, I was seeing, one, my cardiovascular panel was moving towards a very healthy state. Cholesterol was going down, cortisol was going down, the stress hormone, testosterone started boosting naturally. And then from another side, from the physical side, I actually saw my body fat dropping significantly. I went from 15, 16%, which is considered, normal-ish, to under 7, 8% in about 2 or 3 months. So I think, the breathing was the catalyst. The breathing was sort of like the tip of the spear. And then as I got more comfortable doing the breathing every day, I slowly started to feel better in the cold. I slowly started to figure out how to handle the cold better. I started to feel better in the sauna, and then the diet changed, and then everything sort of cascaded from there. And I mean, if I should have done a before and after picture, because I probably looked like a different human being after 3 or 4 months.
It's true, because most of the time, especially, so I think the first time I heard about Wim Hof is when he broke the record for diving for the furthest distance under ice or something like that. That was a little before the Vice documentary.
Yeah.
Because they kind of documented it on Vice. And when you look at an outlier, you normally kind of disassociate. You say, okay, that can't be me. But I think if you show it before and after, you kind of show how you were like someone out there and you did make a change. It can definitely lead to other people making that change. But if we can unpack a little bit the entire system. So you're saying I was doing the breathing and continued from there. We obviously all breathe.
Right.
What's the difference between the average person, how they breathe, maybe less than average, what are some mistakes in breathing, and then what is the action that you have done in order to
Yeah.
improve?
So it's a good question. Average person, and I'd say most people have some dysfunctions when they breathe. That could be they breathe through their mouth, they sigh excessively, so they take big gasping breaths and they sigh. They hold their breath. A lot of people, when they get stressed out, I work with professional athletes, musicians. A lot of times when they get in that stress state, they hold their breath or they breathe really heavy through their mouth. So that's common. I mean, I think that's based on just the way we're programmed these days. Oftentimes I'll see people on their phones or myself on my phone, and I'm looking at my phone like this, and my mouth drops open. And your mouth should really be closed all the time unless you're eating or speaking. Otherwise, your mouth should always be closed. There's no filter in your mouth. So when you breathe through your mouth, there's zero filtration. It's not good for your teeth, your gums. You could have a dentist on here and talk to the dentist about the correlation between gum and tooth disease and heart disease. It's our first line of defense is our breathing. So, we're breathing roughly 25,000 times per day. So when it's off, like what I'd mentioned, those different issues, then all of a sudden you'll start to see more issues with sleep. You'll see more issues with, like I said, gum, tooth disease, but you also see stress issues. People tend to be more stressed out, more anxious when their breathing is off. The way we calm our nervous system, there's two ways. Dr. Andrew Huberman talks about it at length. The two ways are by breathing and by your vision. Your eyes actually help regulate your nervous system and help put your nervous system in a calm state or into a more alert state. So I think when I work with people, I try to get them to, one, practice the breathing exercises that we do, which most of the breathing exercises I teach are very calming, but then two, start to notice how you're breathing more throughout the day. So like you and I, we talked about jujitsu and I know you live in Miami, you're in the car a lot. For you to notice, how am I breathing when I'm driving? Is my mouth open? Is my mouth closed? If I'm talking on the phone and I'm trying to do my work, am I talking a lot? So therefore I'm holding my breath or I'm breathing through my mouth a lot. So there's two things. There's conscious breathing, which is what Wim Hof method is. So it's consciously directing, influencing, and changing up your breath, like holding your breath, breathing fast, slow. And then there's breath awareness. That's when you just allow your breath to do whatever it does naturally. So you just go to sleep at night and you notice, oh, I'm breathing through my mouth or I'm breathing through my nose. I'm not changing that. I'm just noticing it. Or I'm going to the gym. I'm getting ready to go to the gym. How am I breathing before I'm going to go roll at jiu-jitsu? Am I stressed out? Am I anxious? I just had 2 cups of coffee. Am I breathing weird because of that? So I try to focus on teaching people how to become more aware of their breathing. Because once you become aware of it and you start to notice, hey, my breathing's slightly off. I breathe more through my mouth and I breathe up here in my chest, or I breathe, short, shallow breaths, or I gasp for air a lot. Then you can start to make the changes, because most people aren't going to, as well as anyone, you're purple belt jiu-jitsu. Most people will show up at jiu-jitsu, they'll try it once and they'll never come back again, or they'll come for a few weeks and then something changes. With breathing, it's the same thing. If I work with you one-on-one and we do 5 sessions, you might not do it again, but you don't have to necessarily practice. You could just become more aware of it in your regular life. And then all of a sudden, just that awareness will hopefully improve the quality of your breathing. And then from there, you start to notice like, oh, I'm actually breathing through my mouth when I sleep, or I'm breathing through my mouth when I'm rolling or working out. And then all of a sudden you maybe start to make some adjustments, because it is the most basic and fundamental movement that we make. You're doing it all the time. You could go days without eating. A lot of people, me included, will do a 3-4 day water fast. You can go a couple days without drinking water. You can go days without sleeping. I just recently experienced my wife had a baby. We went weeks without sleeping. It felt like, breathing's non-negotiable. If you don't do it 6 to 12 times per minute, you're going to have some problems. Most of the time, you don't even have to think about it. Your body just does it. Because if your body didn't have that autonomic system of telling you breathe, 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 then you might forget. it's an interesting thing because it's the one thing that humans do consciously, like we can direct our breathing, but no other animal consciously thinks like, all right, I'm going to take a big inhale and I'm going to hold my breath as I exhale. You know what I'm saying? Like animals don't, they just do it naturally and it matches their environment. So like if my cat gets let outside and all of a sudden gets tense and alert, it's going to affect my cat's breathing. But humans, we can literally go outside and be like, all right, I'm nervous. I can breathe slow and I can relax myself. Or I'm rolling in jujitsu. I'm getting really tense and tight. I can relax myself and calm myself down in half guard. I don't need to be in this aggressive state because I'm in a comfortable position here. So we're actually the one animal or species that can do it consciously and change the way we do it. And that in turn changes our heart rate, it changes our blood pressure, it changes the way our mind processes information, it changes our digestion. So it has this cascading effect. So when it's on and you're doing it at a good level and it's comfortable for your body, it will have a cascading effect on your digestion, your heart rate, your cardiovascular health, your mood, your energy. So that's kind of what I noticed was just the more I focused on it, the better it got, the more calm I could make myself, the more I could bring myself up. Because breathing can be calming and relaxing, like most people think. You know, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna download Headspace or this meditation app because I need to relax. That's what 90% of the people think. But breathing can also be energizing. Like there was a period of time yesterday, for example, I went for a run. Before I went for the run, I did 4 rounds of Wim Hof breathing just to amp myself up. It's like 105 degrees in Salt Lake City right now. I like to run with a beanie on. It's hot out. It's like a little bit of an aggressive run, but if I can amp myself up with breathing and get myself energized, maybe the run's going to be a little bit better. Breathing can also be a third thing, which is cathartic. So oftentimes you can do a breathing session, and this happens often with like rebirthing or holotropic breathing, which is a very aggressive kind of fast moving breath exercise. And people cry, people laugh, people start yawning, and it becomes this very cathartic experience. So breathing can be a lot of different things. And I think that's why Wim got a lot of popularity, because he sort of rediscovered this breathing exercise, the Tumo breathing. And a lot of people didn't realize that you could have such physical sensations when you breathe. So if you've done Wim Hof, if you haven't, I'm happy to talk about it, but you can get tingling all over your face and your jaw, where your face feels like it's buzzing or humming. Your chest can feel that way. Sometimes people can get like these lobster claw hands where their hands get like clenched and they're in this kind of state where they can't move. Sometimes again, people can laugh, they can cry. I mean, I've done breathing sessions where I don't even know why I start laughing all the way through it. And it's this really nice release. And I think Wim sort of brought these other modalities of breathing back into popularity because, these are ancient practices. There's almost and this isn't proven, but there's almost no breathing exercise or cadence that hasn't been done before. I mean, think about the existence of humans, thousands and thousands of years. I mean, you're telling me if I came up with a breathing exercise right now that nobody's tried that before, I'm sure someone has somewhere down the road. It's just the repackaging, the putting it out on social media, claiming this was my thing or that thing. I mean, listen, every breathing coach, expert, whatever you want to call it, has their shtick or their routine. I'm sure someone else down the road or in the past, they've done it, So it's like, I almost think, it's like this like unspoken communication that people can do. Like when I'm rolling with someone and I'm rolling with like, let's say a bigger, heavier guy, and we're like 2 minutes into a 5 or 6 minute round. And he's like, I'm like, I know where we're at. You're done. Listen, he's probably a purple belt and I'm still a low level, like, white belt. He's still going to tap me at some point, but I know if I work hard now, I'm going to make him work past his comfort zone and I'm going to really push him. But, it's like this unspoken dialogue that you have with breathing.
Definitely. And we could see it. So kind of going hardcore into the martial arts world, even though that's kind of far from this podcast, but I think it's an amazing example. We just saw a few months ago a guy named Leo Vieira fight in the UFC, and Leo Vieira, to people who don't know, is really one of the most influential, most terrifying jiu-jitsu practitioners of the last maybe decade and a half. very decorated, multiple time world champion, reaching really the pinnacle of athletic endeavors as far as jiu-jitsu and fighting goes. And he just fought in the UFC, which is the biggest fighting organization out there. And he got submitted by a person who isn't specifically good in jiu-jitsu. He's okay in jiu-jitsu. He's a purple belt. And again, Leo Vieira is this multiple-time world champion. And the reason he got submitted, it was because he just ran out of energy completely. So, they say fatigue makes cowards of us all.
Yeah.
And that's 100% true. And what I think the modern society contributes is definitely the ability to aggregate knowledge or to access knowledge. So I'm sure whatever breathing method we come across, it's not the first, not the second, not the third time someone has tried it in history. Maybe we should consider ourselves lucky that we can access it and that we got these tools. And what I think Wim Hof, what draws me specifically to Wim Hof is the packaging, but the packaging, and on the packaging, it's saying you can control your body, you can control your chemistry, your biology. And that's, I think, the message or the magic of the message of Wim Hof. And in that, subject, and even connecting with Dr. Huberman, the second part of the Wim Hof method is that relationship with temperature. And Huberman talks a lot about how temperature is that governing switch hormonally in our body. How, when we wake up in the morning, our temperature is higher. When we fall asleep, the temperature lowers, and that's part of the way that our system regulates itself. So what is the relationship with temperature and Wim Hof? What are you doing exactly? Are you just getting into a sauna?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, the relationship with cold, because it's really, Wim doesn't necessarily promote the heat, but it is always part of my routine to, I was into sauna and steam way before I ever got into a cold plunge. You go to a spa, you get a massage, the sauna's there, cold plunge, I wouldn't even go into most of the time. And I think for me and for, the method, I think one of the big draws is initially the cold. It's seeing, these professional athletes and people doing ice baths for years and years and years. And it's kind of like that wow factor that people have before the workshop. They're like, oh, it's all about the ice bath. The truth is, if you go to a Wim Hof workshop, most of the time it's anywhere from 3 to 5 hours long. The ice bath's like 20 minutes, like 30 minutes at the end. You talk about the cold, but ultimately it's the mindset. The mindset builds your understanding of what the cold is. First off, like the acknowledgement of this is a healing modality. This is to be respected. This is to go into with like a sense of calm and peace before you go in. And then the idea is that you're going to work on your breathing for 3 hours in a way that you probably never have, because most people don't even think about how they're breathing. They just breathe. And you go in so dialed into your breathing and almost calm and euphoric from the breath session that people will go through, that it gets you into this kind of loose, relaxed state. It's like when you see fighters before they go into a fight, you see that one's super tense and like really like ready to rock, ready to pop off. And the other one's like super chill, very relaxed, but very dialed in. The mindset and the breathing, that's what prepares people to get into the cold. So the workshop doesn't really work and the method doesn't work if it's just one or two pillars. It has to be all three. Like that's sort of like the magic formula for the method, because Wim has his own mindset. And I think, you touched on it briefly. The thing that people like about Wim and the reason people gravitate towards him is because he speaks from the heart. He's not trying to manipulate or talk in a way where he's trying to outthink people or outsmart people. He just tells you what he feels. And he always says, feeling is believing. So when you get into the cold, the initial response is going to be a stress response. That's what Huberman talks about. It's what, Dr. Rhonda Patrick talks about, that noradrenaline, that norepinephrine kicks you hard when you first get in. Your first response is to kind of suck for air, like scared breathing, like flight breathing. And then all of a sudden, if you have a coach or you're doing it with someone that's helping you, they'll start to tell you to emphasize the exhales. So you focus on long exhales. The exhale is actually how we calm ourselves down. The inhale raises your heart rate. The exhale lowers your heart rate. And oftentimes, in breathing sessions, a lot of people wear these pulse oximeters because it's measuring your pulse, your heart rate, oxygen saturation, your blood's oxygen saturation. So you can literally see when you breathe in, your beat goes up maybe 1 or 2. And when you exhale, the beat goes down 1 or 2. So with that in mind, when you're in the cold, focusing on your exhales is actually how you start to relax. And the vision. So it's like the vision. So I've done workshops in studios in small Manhattan or Brooklyn studios where everyone's surrounding the person in the ice bath and people have their phones out in that person's face. And it's like they're getting kind of cramped visually because they're seeing all these people around them. And they have a lot harder of a time relaxing than someone, let's say, comes over to my house. We're in my backyard. They go into the ice bath. It's just me and that person, and they're breathing and they're looking out onto trees and in a garden, and they have all these visuals that are helping them to relax also. So from there, once you relax, that's when all the health benefits kick in. I've done workshops at places where you have really strong, tough guys get into the ice bath, and even women, too, and they get in and they kind of grit their teeth and they squeeze and they fight and they try to muscle through a 3-minute ice bath. They never have a good time. It's always a difficult process. They basically never relinquish control. They never submit to the experience. They just allow the ice to kind of be something that they're rolling with and fighting with. It's like the difference between like rolling and flow and just playing around and having fun, and pulling that gi and squeezing till your arms start to shake. That's what people do in there. They try to like beat the ice, and you can't beat 35 degrees. You can work with 35 degrees. You can breathe into 35 degrees. You can allow your body to kind of absorb the cold and feel the cold. And then you can allow the cold to do what it's supposed to do, which is lower your inflammation, boost your collagen, give you a boost of energy, help you burn energy also. And it's a whole different experience based on how you're breathing and what you're doing with your muscles and how you're clenching or if you're relaxing. So that's where all the health benefits really start to kick in. And it's the people that relax and they're able to drop in.
And is that the part that you're talking about in the Wim Hof method as far as mindset? Is that the mindset you're talking about?
It's the mindset leading up to it in a way. Yes. It's hard to teach that because it's so intuitive. It's natural. So some people, depending on what their background is, where they come from, how they've, dealt with stress, how they deal with life. A lot of times too, I joke with people. I say, listen, I could tell you to go into the ice bath and do 3 things right away. You're not going to remember one of them, because the moment you hit that 35-degree water, everything goes out the window. It's like you tell me 2 things to do when I'm going to roll for the first time. I don't care what you told me. If there's a 250-pound guy trying to strangle me, it doesn't matter what you told me. I'm trying to survive. That's the same stress experience that you have in the ice bath, where you go in and your body's going to do whatever it wants to do. Your system is going to go into overdrive. Your breathing is going to go like that. And then it's the coach's opportunity to step in and help and try to down regulate you or coach you through the breathing. And then also some people just know. Some people go in. I have had people in my workshops, they go in and it's like nothing. And it's not only, listen, I'm a Wim Hof instructor. I did one this morning with a guy that's training to become a Wim Hof instructor. And I went in, I had a way harder time, it looked like, than he did. I got in and, I'd done an ice bath yesterday. I woke up early this morning. I was tired. I just went in and it shocked me. And the first time, when I go in, I fully submerge. I dunk my head. I try to get my whole body in. So it hit me hard, and that's part of why it's good. It's part of why like jujitsu is good, because it's hard. If it was easy and you went to jujitsu and you crush everyone every day, that's not fun. You go there and you're expecting to have a difficult experience, but learn. And it's the same with the ice bath. It's hard. Even if you get really good at it and you figure out how to down regulate, you still get that stress response. And that's why people do it, because it does kick up that adrenaline, that norepinephrine, and then you do get that dopamine on the end. So you do get to relax, but it's all through breathing and mindset.
That's amazing. So first of all, that's I don't do Wim Hof, per se, but your explanation now just is very motivating as far as doing it. So how would a person start this journey? First of all, as far as mentorship, but also as far as tools, right? What is the base minimum, and where do you go from there?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, it's hearing about it first. So it's whether it's listening to a podcast like this, or going to like the main guy, Wim Hof, and listening to him on his own podcast now, or he's been on a lot. And then maybe you download an app. That's like the bare minimum. I would say you download like the Wim Hof app, or you download another breathing app. There's hundreds out there now. And then, you start there, or if you're someone that's really heavily interested and have been kind of already done that sort of research and that legwork, find an instructor. There's instructors all over the country, all over the world. I mean, there's more instructors in Europe than anywhere else, but there's literally instructors all over the world. You could reach out to most of them and just ask them to hop on a call, or set up a call, or set up a session, a one-on-one. Or a lot of them, I have a lot of friends that do the same things that I do. And we have group sessions now. We have sessions every week on Zoom. There's workshops all over the country, all over the world. I mean, you could literally go pretty much to any country in the world and find a workshop. And it's normally like anywhere from like $80 to like $150 for a 4-hour workshop. And sometimes people are like, oh, it's really expensive workshop. But if you can learn a tool or a method that could potentially change your life, change your sleep, change your recovery, change your attitude, your energy, your performance, seems like not that much money, and then from there, there's some people that do it and they fall in love with it, and then they want to continue to learn, but eventually become a teacher of the method. There's a lot of stuff out there too. It's not just Wim Hof method. There's XPT, which is Laird Hamilton and Gabby Reese's organization. They also do sauna, ice bath, and they also do a pool training, a pool workout where you go into a swimming pool with weights, to train your stress response in breathless situations and hypoxic situations. And there's, Oxygen Advantage, which is really science heavy. But, for me, Oxygen Advantage is really more in line with how we're supposed to breathe all the time. Wim Hof breathing is only for like 1% of your day. It's just for one portion of your day can you do Wim Hof breathing. Oxygen Advantage, Buteyko method, that's how you should be breathing all the time. So, it depends. Everyone's different. Some people aren't really into breathing hard and fast like Wim wants you to do. So maybe it's Oxygen Advantage, and if it's the cold that you're interested in, you can always start by taking a shower. And at the end of the shower, even in Miami, you just turn the hot water off, turn the cold on, even though it doesn't get that cold, it's still going to hit you in a way that it's different. So you could start there and then slowly work your way towards, maybe going to a workshop, or maybe setting up an ice bath with your friends, or going to a Zoom breathing session, by one of the many instructors that offer it. The nice thing about breathing is I can lead a session like how we're talking now. And if you follow my cues, you follow the cadence that I'm giving you or close to it, you'll have an experience. I mean, you'll feel shifts take place, whether that's moving to a more relaxed state or a more energized state, or even having cathartic release. I mean, if you're working with people that know what they're doing and they're safe and they treat the participants, like they should, like family, then you could have a really enjoyable kind of breakthrough experience, even on a Zoom session. I mean, my work has changed primarily from in-person workshops to almost majority online. I work corporate online. I do breathing sessions with companies. I do one-on-one Zoom sessions. I do group sessions, and all online, a lot of them. I mean, I'm starting to do more in person now, but you really can have that experience in a tangible way, even though you are on Zoom.
I agree. I think it's a big opportunity. I think it's a twofold opportunity. Firstly, to kind of connect to something that you're saying. When I talk to my friends or people who I meet along my way of life, and I talk to them about changing their habits in order to improve their wellness and health. You don't normally, but oftentimes you get met with this shrug, the same shrug you're going to be met with if you offered someone to change their car into a better car.
Right.
They're like, my car is good enough. It's not your car. It's literally changing from lack of a better analogy, the road and the views while you're driving.
Right.
And you, by the way, your how well you're seeing the road, etc. It is literally the most important investment you can have. Changing your life from a vegetable sitting on a couch
Yeah.
into a wellness seeking individual. I think it's the most important. And
Yeah.
another thing that I loved that you said was the fact that the benefits are, I don't know if they're immediate, but they can be sensed pretty fast and can be, built upon. And I think it's very important because sometimes when we take vitamins or anything like that, we really kind of need to trust,
Right.
the road or whatever.
Yeah. I think it is immediate, and it's a good point. It's like, it's when you do that intense workout or you're, Peloton, you go to jiu-jitsu or go for that run, you get that runner's high. You feel good afterwards. When you're on the run, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Yesterday I hadn't run for months, and yesterday I went for a run. I'm in mile 1. I'm like, God, I should do this all the time. You do have that experience when you get into the cold, you really feel like you're alive. And a lot of people are in a very passive, kind of lethargic state right now, and they think that is the status quo. Like you made that car analogy, which I like, and most people think that experience that's what it is. That's what life is. Like I reached a point in my mid-20s and early 30s. I'm like, God, I guess I'm just gonna feel bad all the time and be tired on a Monday every day for the rest of my life, and I'm gonna be miserable in this office job. And you just kind of settle for it. And most of the time, people don't make change because they're too tired. Like I read a book on how to change and how to break new habits. I break old habits and start new habits. Most of the time, people are just too tired to do something to shift their whole routine. And I get that. The breathing is like low hanging fruit though, because you don't have to go to the gym to do it. You can literally be on your floor, on your couch, on your bed. You can download an app and you can listen to someone else tell you what to do, and it will make you feel different. And, sometimes getting to the gym or doing the things that you're supposed to do, like eating habits, changing that up, it's hard. The way society, and not to go too macro, but the way society is set up, it's for people to be as lazy and as apathetic as possible. I mean, just look, I can order literally anything I want within a minute and it will be delivered within a day or two. And I don't have to do anything for it. It comes right away. I open up my box. I have my food, my clothes, whatever I want. And it's all really made for us to be as comfortable as possible. And what the Wim Hof method does and what jiu-jitsu does and all these other modalities and things, it takes you out of that comfort zone and allows you to start to operate from a place of discomfort, but unknown. It's not necessarily like completely uncomfortable, but it is stretching what you think is appropriate for your day-to-day experience. And I find that the further you can go outside of that box, and not necessarily far outside, but in a safe way, trying other things will make you feel better. It will make you feel more resilient. So if you're in the same routine all the time and you feel like shit, then you might want to look at that routine and change it up. And, a lot of people aren't willing to do that because they're really comfortable in that experience. And it's tough, but I reach a point, and I think maybe one of my best assets is if I'm not in a good place and I'm not happy with the job or whatever it is in my life, I'm willing to make a change. I'm willing to try something new to get out of that status quo. And I'm willing to shake things up. Just because I won't go back to that place of misery.
Yeah. And kind of 100% I agree with you. And going back to something that you said about not needing any equipment, not needing a gym in order to start a breathing habit, I think is super important, and kind of connecting to some of the jujitsu and analogies and terminology. When someone consults me where they should, what's the best gym that they should be training at, or something along those lines. Normally, my answer is, unless they need something special. Normally, my answer is, you really should go for an adequate gym that is the closest to you,
Yeah.
because there is something magical about deciding something and being able to do it either on the spot or something very close to on the spot before those protective or kind of procrastination mechanisms start
Totally.
in your head. And that, I think, it's magical about breathing. You can literally, almost in a snap of a finger, you can start that
You could do as little as 6 breaths. I normally start all my sessions with 6 slow breaths through the nose, just to show people, hey, you don't need to have a 30, 45-minute, hour-long session. And I've done corporate sessions that were 6 minutes. There's like, you can do 6 minutes for the board of directors meeting right before we start the directors meeting, 1 minute intro, 6 minutes of breathing, 1 minute outro. That's it. And a lot of people tend to feel something within the first 6 breaths. 6 nasal breaths in and out is enough to lower heart rate and blood pressure. So for a lot of people, especially for those that are holding their breath or taking those gasping breaths, just 6 slow ones through the nose can make a shift. And, a lot of times the rebuttal for people is like, I don't have time to do 5-10 minutes of breathing. I'm too busy. Well, everyone's got time for 6 slow nasal breaths. I mean, it doesn't even take a minute. Maybe it does if you're really slow and you're doing it the way you're supposed to. But I agree though. If there's too many barriers to entry for someone that doesn't really want to take a big step forward, they're not going to do it. It's like if the gym's too far, if the routine is too complicated, then if they're not fully invested, or the days that they have a rough day at work, or they have a problem with their partner or the home situation, they'll find any excuse. That's why I like going to the gym early. I like doing the morning class, because no matter what happens after class, then I don't have to worry about going to that evening class. And I find too, when I was in Manhattan, working out in my gym in Manhattan, the energy and the attitude of the people in the morning was always happier and more upbeat than the afternoon crowd. It was like what I was telling you about jujitsu at night in New York. People were trying to kill me at 6-7 p.m. class. The morning class, everyone's super chill, happy. Oh, hey, everyone knows each other's names. They're happy to be there. They're just happy to be getting in their sweat, getting in their workout. But at night, it's like, I got to get it in. I got to do it. So, if you're finding that, a lot of times, I think get the hard stuff out of the way early in your day. So if like you have a tough time after work exercising because you're too tired and you had a bad day at the office, or, you got to get dinner before, just get it done early, wake up earlier, go to sleep earlier. Your circadian rhythm is more in line with that anyway. So it's better for your body. That was one of the big changes when I started doing Wim Hof method. I started going to bed at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. I get up at 5 a.m., 5:30, no alarm, do my breathing, get my workout in. And by 7 o'clock, I'd already had, a productive morning. So the rest of the day felt good.
Yes. First of all, that's amazing. That's amazing insight. And there is the kind of connecting maybe towards the end a little bit, kind of connecting some biohacking methods and what we were talking about. One of the ways to improve sleep is actually sauna, in the hours leading to sleep. And it's a very interesting notion, because we want to lower our body core temperature, our body temperature,
right,
close to bedtime, and that might seem counterproductive, heating up the body. What happens is that your body kind of overcompensates, called supercompensation, and starts to dump temperature and really gears you very well towards sleeping. Maybe in that little space, I wanted to ask you this before we started recording, and I said I'm going to save it for the podcast. If someone is doing a sauna, they have access to a sauna. What are the time frames that they should be, how long they be in the sauna, then how long in the ice, etc.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think early on, it's important just to like listen to your body. And, a lot of times, the Rhonda Patrick report says 20 minutes in the sauna,
Yeah.
4 days a week to lower mortality. That's a great goal. But early on, your threshold, your tolerance might be lower. You're not used to that extreme heat, especially if you're, anywhere in the country seemingly right now and you're going through a heat wave. So what I like to do, and these are protocols, again, this is all ancient stuff. People have been doing hot and cold for thousands of years, whether you go to, Nordic countries, Sweden, Finland, Japan, Korea, Mexico, all these different places have their own versions of hot and cold. So I personally like to start cold. I find it's more difficult to get into an ice bath or take a cold shower. I also find that you get into the sauna and your body temperature is lower because you've gotten into the cold. So what is normally difficult sitting in 180 plus degree sauna, some saunas are less, some are more, depending on if it's infrared or barrel or whatever. I do my 3-minute ice bath. I don't really time the ice baths anymore. Some days I will. Yesterday I went for the run, so I wanted to have an extended period in the ice bath. Normally the sweet spots, 2 to 4 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, somewhere in that range. Again, though, you have to listen to your body. If you start shivering and your breathing is no longer in your control and you're losing control of your breathing, it's time to get out. So my protocol is ice bath first, full head dunk under. So I get my head cold. So that way my head in the sauna is also going to remain cold like my body. So I do 2 to 5 minutes ice bath. I get out. I don't just run into the sauna immediately after. I take my time. I move around. I squat. I do push-ups. I've even done jump rope. I just kind of try to create some natural body heat. Mm-hmm. That's part of the health benefits. What Huberman talks about, a lot of these doctors talk about, is that you want your body to heat up naturally. That's part of your system. That's part of your body's technology, is to get into the cold and get out and allow your body to burn energy to get back to a normal body temperature. So I take 5-10 minutes, especially nice summertime because it's hot out, it's sunny. So I'll just stand in the sun sometimes. Sometimes I'll move, I'll do squats, like I said. I'll just do body weight stuff just to get my body temperature up. Then I go into the sauna. And at that point, my body temperature is still cold, but I'm not out of control. I feel like my body's ready for the sauna. So I sit in the sauna. And again, it used to be very strict time, 20 minutes on the nose, sometimes more, sometimes less, but typically that was the goal. And now I just stay until I start to get a good sweat going. I get a good sweat going when I can feel my heart beating strong and vigorously, because you get that vasodilation in the sauna. So your veins open up, your circulation starts to really pump, and you can feel sometimes I can feel my heartbeat in my head. I can feel it in my throat. So once you start to feel that, it's time to get out. It's time to get out. So sometimes that could take 20 minutes. Sometimes that could take 30 minutes. I'm trying to become more in tune with my body. I'm trying to listen to my body to tell me, as opposed to using my clock to say, hey, you still have 10 minutes, 5 minutes left. There are some people that need, and then when I started doing these practices, I needed the time. I needed to do breathing exercises and record my holds. That kept me honest and that kept me disciplined. Now I'm at a point where I just feel like my body will tell me, you've had enough time. It's time to get out. So then I get out, take a moment, go back into the ice bath, plop in, head dunk under. And again, it's somewhere between 2 and 5 minutes. If I'm feeling good and it feels really nice, maybe it's 6 or 8 minutes. Maybe it's 1 or 2. Maybe it's hard. This time it's harder. So maybe it's a shorter round. It's somewhere in that 3 to 5 minute zone though. And then same thing, head dunk in, head dunk out, get the head nice and cold, get out, move around, back in the sauna. Again, maybe this time I'm really cold from that second ice bath. So maybe this time I'm extending my time in there. Maybe it's 30 minutes. Maybe the sauna is getting really hot. Now my sauna tends to crank above 200 degrees because it's just got an on-off switch. So it just keeps getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. So I can't do 20 minutes sometimes because it's just, it starts, your nose starts to hurt, your ears start to hurt. So sometimes it's 12 minutes. And then when I start, and then you build up that sweat again. So I start dumping sweat, and that's it. I get out, I do one last ice bath. I typically end on cold for the vasoconstriction. So I like to end on cold. My heart rate gets lowered. You have that cold body temp going into your afternoon, into your evening. In Utah, Miami, it's super hot these days. So the fact that I can maintain a cooler temperature, so if we want to take the baby out for a walk at night, or we want to go for a walk, to dinner, I can go out and not feel overly hot. Also, that vasoconstriction lowers the heart rate. The ice bath is actually a parasympathetic arousal experience. So you're actually getting into a more calm state in the ice bath. Even though the initial point of it is stress, you kick over to this really relaxed place because you get a big dopamine release in the ice bath. The sauna is a vasodilator, so it is sort of sympathetic in nature because it is raising your heart rate, it is raising your blood pressure. So that's typically how my protocols go. It's similar style to XPT, to like Laird Hamilton and Gabby Reese's situation. I did a lot of their workshops in New York. I had two good friends in New York that were their master trainers for XPT. So we would do a Friday night fire and ice sessions with a sauna and 2 ice baths. And so that was typically how the routine would go. And also at the end, the last ice bath is not a long ice bath. It's a quick one. I don't want to be too cold the rest of the night. So like the ideal place to be in for me is like finding that middle temperature of like, I'm not too cooked, I'm not too cold, I'm like very even. There was nights in Brooklyn where we would do this in 20-degree weather outside. And you could literally be standing outside in a wet bathing suit in 20 degrees after 3 rounds and feel totally fine and feel like nothing at all. And that's the ideal goal, is you want to find that sort of middle space. I know a lot of people will sit in the sauna 40 plus minutes, and they really, it no longer is a recovery tool at that place, I think. And the same with the ice bath. When you start pushing the ice bath to the point of, and shivering's not necessarily bad, but uncontrollably shivering, uncontrollable with your breathing, you're going to have a bad experience and you're not going to want to do it again. It's like, it's like anything in life. If you overdo, like you go to eat some food and you eat way too much, you're probably going to turn yourself off from going to that restaurant again. Or, you go to jujitsu and you roll for 2 hours and you're getting crushed. You're not going to want to go back the next day. So for me, it's like develop a healthy practice that makes me feel good afterwards. So that way tomorrow I'm excited to do it again, And listen, there are times to ramp up. There are times where maybe you are training for a competition or you're training for something and you do need to push it a little bit further, knowing that those are the times to ramp up. And then there's times to taper down.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think one of the biggest problems for people who start to work out is that they really go hardcore. Maybe the first 1-2 times they get super sore. Their body has no idea what just hit it. And that experience kind of deters going there again. In general, I think habit forming is completely separate from the actual action. I mean, it's better to start extremely slowly, just to kind of introduce your brain to that new habit that you're building. And go from there.
Totally.
So, the last question I have for you is you kind of mentioned, breathing when you go to sleep, while sleeping, breathing through your mouth. And there's a lot of talk about mouth taping right now. Do you have any experience with it? What do you think about it?
Lots of experience with mouth taping. So I tape every night. I started probably like 3 years ago after I read The Oxygen Advantage, maybe 4 years ago now. I would go through periods of mouth breathing for sleep. And typically, and I think James Nestor mentioned it recently, or Patrick McEwen, if you wake up in the morning and your mouth is dry and your throat is dry and your nose is stuffed, it's probably a good sign that you're opening up your mouth at night. Maybe it's not as much as you think, or it's more than you think, but those are good telltale signs. Typically, people, I recommend start with a brand called Somnifix, SOMNI Fix, FIX. I now use just like the regular sports tape, like that you would use at jujitsu or you use for rock climbing, things like that. So I just put a strip over my mouth. I put it right on my mouth, right when I'm ready to go to sleep. I do slow nasal breathing afterwards, like a 5-second inhale, 5-second exhale, all through the nose. And now I sleep basically through the night, unless the baby wakes up or there's some sort of disturbance in the house. I can sleep from the moment I fall asleep to the morning without any disturbances. And there was a point in time, maybe 5-6 years ago, where I was getting up once a night to go to the bathroom. I was getting up to drink water. That's a sign also that you're breathing through your mouth. So if you're in a deep enough layer of sleep, if you're in REM sleep, you're not going to wake up to pee. That's not necessarily, a lot of people say, oh, I'm getting older. That's just what happens. It's not true. It's actually, if you're in deep enough sleep, your body will stay asleep. You don't wake up unless your body's not in that deep layer of sleep. So I started, now there'll be weeks where I'll do it every night, and then maybe I'll take a night off just to see what happens. And most of the time, those nights I don't sleep as well. And it's probably the easiest, even if you're not going to start a breath practice or you're not going to do ice baths, taping your mouth to sleep at night, if you are a mouth breather, is probably the best thing you could do to save your sleep and save your mood and your energy. I mean, listen, if you're overweight, if you have low testosterone, if you have body injuries, sore, things like that, it's a no-brainer. It's a really quick way to get better, more restorative sleep.
Yeah, and tying it to the title of our podcast, which is Biohacking Beauty, and you did mention James Nestor. So yeah, James Nestor does talk about it briefly in his book, but what he does talk about as well is the fact that if we mouth breathe or if we nose breathe, our literally the shape of our face changes.
Mm-hmm.
If we breathe through our mouth, our roof of the mouth kind of becomes smaller and our face becomes longer and more hollow, and have that long hollow look.
Yeah, totally. The face becomes narrow. The teeth change. I mean, you see kids now, the teeth are in weird places. They're taking out teeth because they won't fit in the mouths. I mean, our whole facial structure has changed. Our jaw structure, all of these things change. And a lot of it's based on diet and breathing. So the interesting thing too about the human body is that you can correct it. You can start to breathe properly, and it doesn't have to be something that you do early on in life. I mean, I can attest, not that I'm old, but I'd had these habits for 15, 20 years, and I was able to change things in a short amount of time. And it takes 3 nights, 4 nights, maybe a week to start to really notice the difference. I have some clients, the first night they mouth tape, they tell me it's the best sleep they've had in months or years. And a lot of them, to go back to the biohacking component, a lot of them wear the Aura Ring or the Whoop band. So they're actually tracking their sleep, and they've shown me their scores. The scores are infinitely better when they tape their mouth and when they don't take their Ambien, or they don't have that evening nightcap or whatever it is they're using to help them sleep at night. Their sleep is infinitely better. The scores, one of my clients, the best scores he ever had was when he was taping. And then people stop, and then they just stop. And that's part of it. Listen, you go through ups and downs, and you try it, you don't. But especially for people that suffer from allergies, I know people are really sensitive, especially now. I think a year of wearing a mask and being isolated, the allergens are in people's noses are very sensitive. So I find a lot of people, if they were to tape, they would ensure nasal breathing. Your nose has a microbiome too. They always talk about the gut microbiome. Your nose has a microbiome, and the way you keep that microbiome strong is by breathing through it, is by creating, allowing these filtration systems to work. I mean, the nasal hair, the mucous membranes, like the nitric oxide, all these things are happening in your nose where you have none of that in your mouth. Your mouth just opens up, it breathes down the throat, your throat gets sore. If people want to stave off flu, colds, infections, you should be breathing through your nose, because that's the filter. There's no filter in your mouth. So it's not only causing you not to get into deep sleep, but it's also non-filtered air.
Wow, I can't agree more. And it seems, when, I used to dread getting the common cold until I realized it's not, and I used to feel so bad while having it. till I realized it's not the common cold, it's not the runny nose that's making it that bad. It's me starting to breathe through my mouth for an entire
Yeah.
day or two, and you feel, honestly, you feel like you're undergoing something way, way, way worse. Like,
Yeah, totally. Well, it sends stress signal to your nervous system. It's non-filtered air. And people ask me too, like, well, what do you do when you have a cold? And there was a point in time where I wouldn't mouth tape when I had a cold. Then one summer, one winter in New York, I got a little bit of a cold and I wore the tape, even though my left nostril was completely stuffed. I couldn't breathe through it, just my right nostril, and I wore the tape, and I woke up the next day and I felt so much better. So now if I get sick, it's even more important to wear the tape, because that night of sleep is going to indicate and deter whether or not I get better faster. So like the doctors, people will tell you, when you're sick, you need to get rest, you need to sleep. If you're breathing through your mouth all night, you're not sleeping to a deep space, you're sleeping in this low level space. So you're going to, that infection, that illness is going to continue to linger. Your inflammation is going to continue to stay up. So I stay with the mouth tape basically no matter what.
well, listen, yeah, Avi, I feel like we're just scratching the surface. We can talk about
Yeah.
the chemistry of the nose and how we, the mechanisms that are built into nose breathing that sustain us, such as nitric oxide or microbiome of the nose or the
Yeah.
filtration system, and we can have an entire podcast about it. But
yeah, totally. That's what I tell people all the time, that we could talk always about nasal breathing for hours.
so, Avi, really, for someone who does want to get your guidance, what is the best way to reach you? Where can they, get more information about
Yeah.
you or follow you?
So I'm on Instagram. It's at Avilu, Avilu. And then I'm also posting events. I have a retreat coming up in the Yucatan in Mexico, end of October, where we'll be doing a Wim Hof workshop. We'll be doing swimming in cenotes. They can find out more information about that on my website, avigreenberg.com. And then I'm going to be posting a link to my weekly breathing sessions as well on my website. So that way, if someone's interested and they want to try it out, they can always check out my website for updates there. And then I also have a link tree as well.
Great. I highly, highly recommend following Avi and consulting with him. And we obviously would add the, the Instagram handle and the way and your website in the description. And I personally want to thank you, Avi, for this amazing time that you've explained the bare minimum of Wim Hof method. Highly recommended. And I hope we can do it again.
Yeah, for sure, Amitai. I hope we can do it again, and definitely we'll do a breathing session soon. I definitely enjoyed it. Next time I'll come on, we'll talk about jujitsu.
Yes, sir. We have to get the jiu-jitsu going for sure.
Awesome, man. Well, appreciate you so much. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Avi.